Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first kickoff meeting for product planning. We are introducing these monthly kickoff calls to streamline our milestone planning process. And as a part of this process, we'll go through a number of issues that we are going to work on in the upcoming milestone, as well as any additional issues which are rolling over from the previous milestone. We also already, so Nick and Amanda created a recording of walkthrough of all the bugs and features that we are planning to have in the pipeline. So I believe all the team members may have already looked at it. So we can jump straight to planned deliverables. So going through the first list of front-end items. So the first issue is about changing work item type to the another. So this is about converting a particular work item type to a different from a UI. So far, it has been only possible via quick action, only for certain types, like promoting a task to an issue or promoting an issue to an epic. But we want to expose that feature on UI directly via a drop-down context menu. And Nicholas, you have a couple of questions around it. And I think Eugenia also has a follow-up question.
Yeah, so the question is if the frontend needs a separate API or if they can do it by checking the widgets per work item type and do a diff and check what's not in the next new widget.
So in
Because
terms
like
of
sorry, just to explain, there's a screen that you see that which data gets deleted when you change the type.
So do we have a mutation available already that allows users to convert a work item type?
Yeah.
Okay. Then yeah, I think we can utilize it. And as far as like availability is concerned about which work item type is allowed to be converted, I think we are only going to be allowing what is already available via quick actions. Right, Amanda?
Well, we are going to extend it to epics if we want to make the first iteration small and just repeat what we have as a quick action and do a follow-up to include epics. That's fine with me.
Okay. So in that case, we'll start with like showing change type on tasks that only allows one-way transition to issue, and same thing goes for issue. Once those are migrated to work items, where they'll only allow supporting converting from issue to an epic, right?
What do you mean by one way? I just want to make sure I understand.
So I'm not sure, like the backend mutation that we have currently supports converting types arbitrarily between any work item type. Is that the case,
Yes,
Nicholas?
it does.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I can change like a task to an
Okay.
objective
Okay.
today.
Okay. So in that case, based on what is proposed here, we will need to show a UX that allows for converting to any given type as long as mutation allows it. And as far as listing of widgets is concerned, we don't have API at the moment, which shows like which widgets are unsupported while converting between work item types. So if we want to do something like that, we'll have to maintain that information either on backend and then expose it via API or do it on front end. What would be the ideal way here?
We could
Yeah,
check the widgets. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that we don't have to display. Is the question that to display what isn't supported?
Yeah, because when type is converted from one to the other, if a widget from the source type is not available on the target type, that data is going to be deleted. So we need to convey that information on UI.
We don't have to display. Oh, in the last design, I see where you're talking about.
Yes.
Because there's the display which fields.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yep. Sorry,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eugenia. I forgot about that step.
What I meant was that we could check the type of the new type, what widgets support, and compare it with the current type. So that would be technically an endpoint because we go to the type and we check the list of widgets for the type.
Okay. So, in order to consume that mutation, then again, we would have to wait for 17.4 and that mutation to be available to be able to consume it for 17.5. On the other hand, like, yeah.
That's already available. Yeah. the one I'm referring to,
Uh-huh.
and the convert, they're both available. So
Oh,
the
okay.
convert would be after. So I think maybe a front end would have to render the the type
Okay.
that it needs to be used, and then make a request, a query for that type to check the list of widgets, or compare it with the current type.
Okay, so
Um,
can you leave a comment in this issue mentioning like the second mutation, because I was aware that type changing mutation might be available, but I wasn't aware of the widget availability check as well.
This will be like a warning.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to before you change the type.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
that's the way I'm seeing it. Maybe I'm wrong, because
No,
otherwise, if you change the type, you won't have any warning. You just delete that data,
Yeah.
and you will see the system notes, but it will not warn you in advance. So I thought that we wanted to show a warning of this is
Yes.
what's going to be deleted. To get the difference, we will get the widgets from the current type minus widgets from the new type, and that will give you a list of widgets.
Okay. Okay.
So that can already be retrieved, but it will have
Okay.
to be a query before you actually do the conversion.
Okay. Okay. So the diff would have to be run on front end at the time of
Mm.
showing this model, and then we can do it. Okay. Great.
And
So in
maybe
that
there's
case,
a way to select, like maybe put in a drop down with the types you can select.
yeah.
And once you select one, then you do that query and you show the warning. Maybe that's an option.
Okay.
And then they submit, enter, whatever, and then that will do the conversion.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So in that case, I think we are sorted. Like front end issue is not blocked in that case, so we can move on to the next item.
I can leave a comment with this, I said, as a proposal.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
I just want to clarify that I want to make sure that this is available as new work items become available without having to rework it every time.
Yes, that should be.
Great. Thank you.
And you mean the warning, the option of the warning, or the entire conversion of types?
Yeah, the ability to convert. So like, let's say we migrate requirements. I don't want to have to do this again for requirements. I want it to extend to all work item types in a generic fashion, if that makes sense.
Yes, we do have
Okay.
some validation, but we can, that's usually, we have, I think, settings where we allowed what can be converted, if I remember right. But yeah, any new type should be included.
Great. Thank you.
Or a small change.
And so regarding that drop down that we are going to show, within this particular model, there is no UX about the drop down here. But in case we were to show a drop down for target work item type, how do we populate that drop down? Like, do we have a query to fetch all the available work item types that are there?
Yeah,
there is a query
see.
I just posted on chat to get all the work item types for a group. So I think that would be it, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
But
we
it
do have
doesn't-
some limitations. Yeah.
there's a restriction. Yeah.
What's the restriction? Sorry.
I mean, there's first is a restriction that we make up. Like you have let's say that you have an OKR and a key result underneath, and you want to change the key result to a task. We do not allow that, although it's technically possible. So these restrictions are not part of these queries.
But do we have this kind of restriction in any query? Sorry, I really don't know this part of the code yet.
Expose?
So.
No, an endpoint. This is part of the validation when you convert, so you still get an error. So we could technically, maybe as a first iteration, list all the work item types, and then the next one, add an endpoint to expose the types allowed. We have a similar endpoint for children type that can be allowed to add as children, so we can do something similar for changing.
Maybe we could just add a filter to this endpoint, like when I'm asking for the work item types, if I can convert from and give a work item type. So filtering to just return the work item types that I can convert from the work item type given.
Yeah, the
Even-
problem with that is that we don't import a work item ID, so we will need the current work item to compare what can it be converted to. And in that query, we just get the group ID, which is
Yeah,
user
but
work.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, adding a filter input in there, so the front end can send the work item type of the current issue, of the current work item, and then get back a list of possible target work item types.
Oh, I see. As an argument. Yes, we could
Yeah.
do that.
This way, we don't need a new endpoint. That's what I'm saying. Just a filtering on this endpoint that already exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that would allow us to make this particular dropdown dynamic instead of hard coding it based on known pairings available.
Yes.
So as the first iteration, so while we wait for that filtering support to be available, we still have those restrictions known on the backend. We can at least have this dropdown prepared, at least hard coded for the first iteration, right?
Yes. It will just return an error when you in normal mutation error.
Yeah, that is when the type is not compatible. But
Yes.
as a front end implementation itself, I would know that okay, I am currently viewing an epic work item type, and target types can only be these 2-3 types, and I can then hard code those values depending on work item type. Sure, it is not ideal because we would still be introducing type specific logic, but while we wait for that query to be available, at least front end won't be blocked. And once query is available, we can replace that hard coded with the dynamic list.
Yes. I think that would be the way to go
Okay.
to not delay it.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah. And
just a question. Sorry. Yeah, I just one more question. Jack, can you wait for? So it is regarding the errors we need to show. Let's say that this data will be deleted. So is it widget definitions query we would be using? So we need to get widget definitions and then compare both, and then we need to show that this data might be not available in.
No, it would be in the work item type and then widgets. So then we return the widgets available for that type. It will not be in definition. You will use the type, the current type, and fetch the widgets for that type. And use a widget name, I think is the field, and then compare it the same.
Okay. But what will be the input for that query? It would be just type?
The type, yes. The current type versus the new type. So it will be 2 queries and then compare the result.
Okay. I'll check once.
and I think we can dig into the implementation async because we have a lot of items here and we are already 15 minutes out. So
the next point, if we are there already, is that I just wanted to bring up that we don't support the epic type yet. We have a backend verification because the epic the work item now has an issue, a legacy epic attached to it, and so we just put a blocker there that those items cannot change type, so it will not work until we do something about it from the backend.
So should we program a separate backend issue to unblock Epic in a future iteration?
Yes,
Okay.
that will need backend work. Yeah, at the moment it would just return an error.
And then no front end work after that?
No, it should be the same. Yes, it's just to we will have to make a decision on what we're going to do with it. I guess we're going to delete the legacy epic and just change the type.
Oh,
But
okay.
it shouldn't require any other changes. It would just to allow this type to work. It needs to be unblocked from the backend.
Would you mind opening an issue for that one with the backend details and questions that are needed?
Yes.
So the expectation for this one will be this release, it will not include Epic.
Okay, I can link it to this issue as well.
Thank you.
Just for awareness, this is like a huge task. to convert to epics? As when we are done with the cleanup, it's easy, but until now, then it's a huge task. And we also need to think about, actually, how should, wait, one more question. When we currently have only epics as a work item type on a group level. So what does it mean changing to an epic? Because it would actually be epics on a project level, right?
Which we will be releasing. So what we could do
Okay.
is we can block it until both workstream 5 is complete and epics are available at the project level, just to make our lives easier. We will
Okay,
not allow
then-
converting types until after that.
Then it could actually be possible without this cleanup on the project level.
Okay, I don't think project level epics will be done before workstream
Okay.
5 anyway.
Okay.
Good, really good call outs though. Thank you.
So second item regarding ability to create a related work item from an existing work item, and we'll discuss it along with the backend issue mentioned below. So the idea is that when user is creating a new work item from an existing work item, we would expose that as an action. When the model shows up for the creating work item, within that model, it will also show that we need to relate it to an existing work item at the time of creation. This means that the work item create mutation that we have today needs to support an additional parameter of related work item ID. And if UX agrees, and once Nixie is recording, we can see if we want to allow user to also set the relationship type itself. Like right now in legacy issues, one can create a related issue, but it is just a plain related issue. It's not a blocked issue or a blocking issue. So if we want to have that control exposed as well, we can do that by adding an additional parameter of relationship type. But for a start, we can go with one change. And Nicholas, you mentioned about, yeah, of course, since the backend issue is scheduled for 17.4, front end would have to wait until then. So.
If it's a trivial step to include relationships since you're already in there, let's do it. If it's more than trivial, let's break it out as an iteration and move forward and do that separately.
Yeah, so in the backend,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Eugene.
We couldn't do like a general relationships because they're quite different. So in this case, we would be adding an input for the widgets. So the linked items is one of the widgets. So we will add an input. So the same way you use other widgets when you create the work item, you will add an input there, like to link it to a specific. If you wanted the same for a child, for example, or a parent, that's a different widget. It would be the hierarchy widget. So we couldn't just have a generic input. It would have to be separated by widget.
So this particular work is for the actions menu in the header of the detail record. If we wanted to come back and add it to the hierarchy widget, that's a whole separate.
Yes,
Understood.
there would be a different input. Yeah.
Understood.
It might be possible with what we have already, depending what we need to do. But this one would be very specific, the one I'm referring to relating, to linking a work item. That would be the specific widget that gets a new input.
And that's already available or not available yet?
Not available. No, we will
Okay.
have to add a new mutation, a new input to the mutation, create mutation.
Okay.
Okay. And the third item is about instrumentation. So in the child items widget that we have exposed, we need to show view. So we already show view on a roadmap link that opens roadmap view with the epic filter pre-applied. We just need to instrument it. That is to track how many users are actually clicking on this link to view roadmap. Also, this issue is in a way related to the instrumentation that we are missing on entire hierarchy widget. So just an FYI, not something that we want to work on immediately unless we find that adding these remaining actions are also possible. But every interaction that happens on child items widget needs to be instrumented down the line. So this would be the first step. And the second step would be to add tracking for all these different actions. Okay, and the the fourth one is about updating UX of contextual view drawer. I think some of the UX work was already being done by Natalia on the plan stage level for the drawer that we are using. But there are a couple of changes that we want to do as a part of 17.4. So since Jack has worked on the drawer, Jack, you may want to like expand on this.
Yeah, so this is it's a quite a mixture of whether or not things are done in this list or not, or whether they just need a little bit more tweaking. So the fact that this is all broken out into individual tasks is really helpful because it's effectively then a checklist. Anything that's like because at the moment I'm working on adding this to the adding the drawer itself onto the work items listing pages. It will kind of go on all of them all at once we switch on the feature flag. Once it's in place, I'm happy to pick these individual parts up and go through them one at a time and make sure they're all solid. So I'm not 100% sure how far through the UX improvements we've actually gotten, but it shouldn't be too difficult to get through all of these, make the improvements and do them in small pieces as well because it'll all be hidden behind a feature flag. We won't have to do one massive update all at once, so that'll be good.
Jack, is it premature to bring the UX updates into this upcoming milestone, given what you're already working on?
I would say that I'm probably within a week I'll be able to move on to working on this stuff. It's very close where I am at the moment to actually having it working properly. Some additional tests and then a review basically. So it'll all be behind the same feature flag, which I think it's possible at the moment to see the draw on a specific issues list, I think.
We can see it in plan stage, I think.
Yeah,
or in
exactly.
OKR somewhere.
So that same feature flag that we've got enabled there will enable the draw everywhere else.
Okay.
But obviously we can make these improvements and then switch it on once we're happy with it. Looking good.
Great.
All right. Thanks for the insight, Jack. And the last item on the front end side is hiding task weight and update weight tooltip on the hierarchy widget. So as a part of migrating to work items for all the epics, the tree view is now showing task list as well. But since weights do not roll up, we need to hide these items from the task list. I believe Rajan is already on it. So unless anyone have any question, we can move on to next one. All right. Okay, over to the backend. So we already discussed about adding of an existing item. The second item here is preventing users from adding more than 10 items to a hierarchy widget. So Anastasia has already implemented the front end of it, given that we can technically do backend and front end independently. The idea was that just like linked items in the child items, when user adds more than 10 items at once, add button needs to be disabled. So front end already does it. So now, at least from UI, nobody will be able to abuse this feature by adding more than 10 items. But the mutation that is used to add child items doesn't support limits on this. So we eventually need to add a limit of 10 items there too, so that even if someone is using API to add more than 10 items, API prevents that from happening. So front end issue is already covered in 17.3 and back end issue is scheduled for 17.4. So any questions there? Okay. And the third item is about roadmap. So within the roadmap, so whatever filters are applied on the roadmap for epics, we need to make sure same filters also influence milestones that are rendered on the roadmap. This means that the query that we have in place to fetch the epics should also support identifying tokens from the filters and apply those to underlying roadmaps. So in case anyone have any question or clarification about this. All right. And moving to the fourth item, so submit as spam flow. So this is related to the report as abuse feature that we have in place. So like in legacy issues, we support reporting an issue or a comment as an abuse. And this is done in two ways at the moment. Like one way is when you report an abuse, either an issue or a discussion note, it gets reported to GitLab's internal mechanism of abuse reporting, where the item shows up in the table on the admin side, and then admin takes action on either user or the discussion itself. The other half of this feature is reporting as a spam via third-party integration. So GitLab supports Akismet integration, where you create an API account over in the Akismet and then have that integration enabled on a project. And then once done that, this dropdown shows an additional action as report as spam. This time, clicking on that link causes this URL to be navigated to a separate endpoint and such as highlighted in this issue. And issue eventually gets reported over in the Akismet. As of now, this is not available for work items because we need a backend for it. So the first change that we need to do is, in case of legacy issues, this happens via URL redirect. So for example, if report as spam action is available here, and if I click on it, it will navigate me to a different route with this mark as spam appended to the URL. But the way work items open today, entire routing happens on the client side. Like once the page opens, view router takes care of fetching the underlying work item and then shows it on UI. URL just shows that, okay, this is the URL for a given work item. So we need to have an equivalent replacement for Akismet integration as well, where clicking on the link should do something when someone reports an item as a spam. So that's one part. Other part is the drop-down item itself needs to be visible depending on the configuration. So in this helper here, whether an item can be reported as a spam or not depends on a particular check on the backend. So we need to make sure that same check is done for work items as well. And for that, we need two of these changes on the backend to cover the other half. I'm not sure like what the adoption is like with the Akismet integration. Perhaps a team that does the integration work may have some insight on how important this integration is. And based on that, we can prioritize if we have everything needed. And remaining two issues are bugs around filtering of milestones on boards via upcoming enum. And then another one is export around CSV. So feel free to take a look at those bugs and make sure you leave a question or a comment there. And yeah. So any questions so far about planned deliverables before we move on to tech debt and slippage?
Did you cover the spike for custom status in miscellaneous?
Yes, sure.
Sorry,
So,
did you already cover it? I missed it.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So I added a spike. This wasn't in the video. Project management is currently conducting a spike for custom widgets, and we are going to take on custom status. Custom status, if you read the Epic, there's a lot of content there. Maybe I'll do a video just on custom status to give the TLDR, but there's multiple iterations. Iteration 1 is to just release a static list of new status values that we will define. So I don't think that our first spike for this should be too complex, but the second iteration will allow users to create their own values. And in that case, we need to join up with what they're doing with custom widgets because we'll have influence of each other. And so whoever owns this, I would love to see them own the entire iteration path and partner up with project management once we're in iteration 2. And ideally, I'd love to see a front end and back end on the spike so that there's no surprises. Or full stack.
So this status will be included in Epic types as well, right from the get-go.
Yes,
okay.
That's right.
I was watching the video from Nick, and I honestly got a bit confused with this status this new thing because that there's like state with closed and open. There's the health status with like how we are tracking things. Then there are labels that like replicate that behavior right now, right? Then there's custom status that comes with this, and then there are custom widgets, right? That we have that where like we can have any arbitrary input.
Well, custom widgets is a separate thing. What they're doing is a separate thing. It's user can create their own widget. They want a widget for team. They can create a team widget with values. So I think that this should either overtake or utilize the current open close state and expand it. Or maybe that goes away. I think that becomes the same somehow. Health status is always just like, what is the likelihood this thing's going to ship in the iteration, or however somebody applies a health status. So that should be a separate thing. And this should replace scoped labels. So we should not expect that customers will continue to use scope labels because now they can use this native field.
It made total sense when I was reviewing it. I still had the thought like, oh wow, and I like that we are opinionated actually with our default types. It was just like, oh, there's another thing added on top, but I fully understand it. Like I was just like, oh, there's another thing that influences open closed that is similar to our labels and health status. But I like the idea. Yeah, it's
Cool.
Right. So moving on to already assigned work, I think anyone can read through the agenda, and in case they have any questions, they can raise it here or async, and we can move on to tech debt. So Nicholas, you want to verbalize the POC that you're working on, given that we have front-end engineers here?
Yeah, this might be actually interesting for front-end engineers. So what we currently do is every time we create boot a new Vue application, what we do is we have some helper method in the backend that we create with all the variables and data we need to boot the Vue application. And this gets out of hand quickly. Like for work items, I think we have 20, 30 data points in there. And sometimes we miss something and we want to display the work item somewhere else. So we need to move that data to some other helper and some other controller. And this can lead to bugs that we actually only catch from feature specs. So it's quite expensive. And we had this a few times last few weeks. So I want to build a GraphQL query that incorporates all of these things we need for booting a Vue application. If you scroll down a bit, I have a proposal where we actually have one GraphQL query for this Vue boot provider, where we have items like for the Vue app itself, like in this case, work item root, and we add something that is required for that. And then we have features for all the feature flags. So we don't use this gone helper anymore and need to push the feature flags from the controller. And this should also make it easier because we have these feature flags on multiple parts of the application and don't need to repeat ourselves. Same with paths and permissions. So yeah, I'm working on this right now, and we'll keep you updated. This was an idea that I had with Natalia, but because she pinged me on this. So yeah, if you have ideas how to make this better, this API, let me know. And this is also, by the way, very required for work items because work items should be able to open anywhere in the application. And this will become very complex when we do the current approach that we have.
I would want to say I'm 100% on board with this because this was one of the big red flags that I saw when I came in and started working on this stuff. So some kind of solution is really important, I would say.
And in terms of product, Amanda, this would be like ideal when we plan to embed work items in other places, because this allows for embedding work items anywhere across product and even perhaps outside, because then we would have to mount the app and everything is self-contained within the app. So down the line, for example, if we are looking at wiki embeddings, for example, this may come in handy there.
And could you like embed a view or just the actual item itself?
should be possible
like
to
a board, for example.
Yeah, should be theoretically possible to embed entire app in any place.
Another interesting example actually would be if we, at the moment, we like the drawer, for example, we open that on specific pages, but perhaps if you have a wiki page and you reference an issue in there somewhere, you could click that and it just opens the drawer up. And that kind of thing is where this kind of portability comes in helpful.
It's the first step to make GitLab a full single page application. Not that we want this completely, but for most of what we like, for parts at least, yeah.
And like speaking of single page, we have a engineering TR incoming for this quarter that deals around single page applications. So this also ties in well with the KR that we have. Right. Okay. And apart from this POC, we also have a tech debt from the migration as a part of workstream 5 linked here, which involves updating, create and update services. So unless Eugenia want to verbalize, we can move on. Next item.
No, just wanted to say this is a first addressing performance problems and to remove the unification of the associations. So yes, it would be important to start it as soon as possible.
Okay. Yeah, and then Casio has simplifying work item dates handling by using single table and a single widget. So Casio, you want to verbalize?
Yeah, I think everyone kind of knows that the role update was way more complex than we imagined at the beginning. So the initial work kind of got outdated very fast, and we need to fix that. And also there's some duplicated data in the database. There's some other stuff that can be a problem in the near future if we don't fix that. So I've been working already, and even the mismatch that we fixed already fixed a little bit some part of that legacy, recently created legacy code. So yeah, that's it. We need to fix those things as soon as possible.
Thanks. All right. And then we also have a bunch of slipped items from previous milestone, which are self-explanatory. So if you're looking at the recording, be sure to also look at the agenda of all the slippage. And then we can move to open discussion.
Yeah, I was just hoping that we could try and dog food the board rather than pasting links. So the idea would be that similar to what you just did, where you walk through each bullet, you would have the board open instead, and we would talk through it. The drawer would be very helpful for something like this. So we just have to open a bunch of tabs, but it would be nice, and then document the comments that you're making and actions on the issue itself. Because having like the single source of truth in GitLab would be super helpful. And also, I want to run into those pain points and gaps so that we can understand the pain that our customers are going through.
Yeah, and I think this was a great exercise, to be honest. Having all the team members on board allowed for a lot of exposure across the team, where now at least everyone knows who the other team member is working on or going to be working on. So thanks a lot for making it happen. Thanks a lot for filling the agenda before the meeting with a lot of details. So yeah.
And just to highlight that we could use different kind of boards too. So like when we get to the point of like what's assigned to people, we can flip to the like by assignee board. We can, for what's currently in flight, we can switch to the board for the current milestone by workflow status and so forth. My next point was just, there's a bunch of maintenance that was already scheduled for 17.4 just because that was our prior process. And so I just want to see if there's anything there that you want to talk about or remove from 17.4. And moving forward, I won't be assigning maintenance. I'll leave it to the team to be assigning maintenance for the milestone.
There is another point for workstream 5 that, but I'm not sure if we have capacity to start it already. We have a spike that involves backend and front end, And basically is we need to identify how we're going to drop support from GraphQL endpoints for legacy epics. So all the places that need to be replaced, all the work that's missing on the work item side, the parity of the APIs, and then all the work that's going to be needed backend to replace all of those. So we have 6 months to deprecate these API, so we have time. Currently it is set as 17.4, but maybe we can move it if we don't have the capacity, because it will not be a small task to this spike. It will be maybe quite consuming.
So Eugenia, when you mention that, like, of course, all the legacy Epics API need to be removed by the time 17 release cycle ends. That includes, one of the challenges with legacy Epics queries is that Epic boards is something that cannot be updated immediately to use work items because we don't have corresponding queries as well. Like I created a bunch of front-end issues yesterday, and one of the front-end issues included updating roadmap app to use work items query. That is rather simple, and that will allow for at least simpler queries to be removed and deprecated. But for complex features like boards, we would need a corresponding work items API to replace with before we can get rid of those queries. And with the capacity that we have in the team and the amount of work needed, we already did a spike last year around creating this shared API layer for work items. And that is, I think, a bigger task and is not as simple as creating queries for Epic boards. So how do we go about the queries which are used for Epic boards as of today?
And in the case, if there's something that cannot be moved to work items, that would be a blocker, and we will not deprecate the GraphQL endpoints. Most, if not all of them, from memory, use the epic type, and that is the thing that we need to deprecate. The epic type cannot be replaced, needs to be deprecated. So everything that's using epic type, all those endpoints need to be deprecated. If it's something preventing us from doing that, the idea of this spike was to identify all of that.
Yeah.
What was the work needed, what is possible, so to have a specific timeline for deprecating the GraphQL endpoints.
Okay.
So that was the goal of the spike. If we know already that it's not possible, then we will have to discuss how we're going to handle that, what's needed, because the idea was to have the epic narrowed to a point where we only have the ID and the IID, to keep the REST API around. So that might be enough also to keep the epic type around, but it's maybe something that we can do as part of that spike as well.
Okay.
We can maybe start the next 17.5. Sorry, Nicholas.
No, thanks a lot for bringing this up. I think time-wise, this is crucial because we have the 6 months policy, and we have 8, and we can only remove this in 18.0, right? Like when we have the next major version. So deprecating them now, deprecating them now is important.
So if we already know of a challenge or something blocking that, we would have to not deprecate it until we find a solution.
So
I mean, the solution.
Sorry.
The solution would be to query the work item then in these endpoints, right?
Yeah, we could. The thing is, would be a breaking change if we remove the epic type. We would start returning a work item type.
Oh, no. We would, similar to the REST API, we would do a presenter, like we would present the epic on the GraphQL as it was before, but we use the data from the work item because that's the most important part for us.
Yes, but I think the problem with that was the ID. That was possible, but I think the ID could match the ID of a work item. So the epic type ID could match the ID of a work item, if that makes
Ah,
sense. I think
yeah.
that was the problem. Yeah, no presenting the date. So
Amanda? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, when is our last available milestone to announce the deprecation to fit within the 6-month rule in order to remove an 18? I don't know if we're 1710 or 1711 this year. I think we should plan on 1710 as the last one. So that would mean announcement in 17.5 for sure, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So do we have an issue for that to make sure that we do that?
No, I think at least from my side, I was hoping to do the spike earlier so we could know for sure that we could deprecate it in 6 months. The big concern was the front end ability to deprecate these endpoints. So maybe we can split this spike to make it more accessible for 17.4 if we have front-end availability, make it front-end only, and just identify if there's a clear blocker, and like if Kushal was saying, the Epic boards might be a blocker, maybe we can identify these milestone for sure and then not deprecate it.
Yeah, so boards is the only blocker as of now. Like as far as roadmap is concerned, like the foundational work on both roadmap and boards is already done. Like both of them are now using Vue Apollo, so it is matter of utilizing the queries. For roadmap, it is simple. Like we need to replace group.epics query with group.workItems query, and that will do the job. I think filters and sorting and searching, everything is already there in the new query. We just need to update the front-end app to handle the new data structure, given that work items are completely different in terms of structure. The challenge is with the boards, however, because their API is very unique to boards itself. So if we are to create all the corresponding queries and mutations for work items, then it might be easier because even boards is also refactored to use Vue Apollo. So it isn't like foundation work is not done. Foundation is already done earlier this year. I think it was around February when Flory removed that feature flag, and boards are now using Vue Apollo. So once we identify which queries are required to be built to support work item boards, then we can start building those queries, and then front end can work in parallel to switch out those queries one by one. And this would also have to work with project management, because although Epic Boards is a separate route on UI, the app itself is the same. So issue boards will also have to transition to handle work items as an issue, which means that we are in a way blocked by how fast project management moves with their issues migration. Because the moment we start touching front end for boards, it is impacting both the boards at once. And we cannot have it conditionally fetch data from one source for epics and the other source for issues. So that is the reason why I highly doubt that even if we mark it as deprecated, we'll be able to accomplish it in time. So in case, for example, we deprecate it today and like in 17.5, and by the time 18.0 releases, we are not able to finish the required front end. We leave it disabled for entire 18.0 then, like deprecated for entire 18.0. And around 19.0 is when we actually remove it, correct?
Or as an alternative, because we could do the following, like we deprecate everything and remove it by 18.0. And if you're not able to get to it, we create a new GraphQL API that does the same, but is alpha.
Okay.
So we just remove it for our customers, but use it internally and can get rid of it whenever we want to.
Because I would be in favor of working on that API layer that we discussed about, because that also ties in with the planning views and saved queries that we have as a long-term goal. So rather than rushing the deprecation, we work on that API layer from the start. And once we reach a point where we feel that, okay, we have all the queries and mutations available to power our saved views and queries, including boards, then we take time and deprecate the API for 6 months. And then we start updating front end with all the new features and the refactors.
But this leaves the backend with legacy code around forever. Like
Yeah.
if we deprecate it now and just remove it by 18.0, the backend has at least a chance to get rid of this code. And if
Okay.
you're not able to remove it for our own frontend in 18.0, we just duplicate the whole API with a different name, publish it as alpha, and then we can remove it within like 1 month or 2 months when we're working on the real APIs.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yes.
could add a placeholder, the placeholder endpoints. I think that's if it's only for Epic boards, we would just make them as similar as the Epic, but it will not be an Epic or a work item. It will be a thing in the middle, because the problem is the IDs can match. And then we replace the front end with those new endpoints. And it's code that we have to delete, but it would allow us to deprecate the Epic type from GraphQL.
All right. Let's spend time on this spike for the deprecation. I'll create an issue for the deprecating discussion, and then we can determine what are the next steps that we can take and take a call from there.
Okay.
All right. So I think that is it as far as kickoff is concerned. Any questions or concerns? All right. Thanks a lot for taking time, everyone. We'll refine it further for the next kickoff, and hopefully it will be much more easier to follow through. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye. Have a good weekend.